Right. So this Aspen Airport thing you sent over is Wendover Productions video.
Yeah.
It seems like this airport is about 80 feet away from like a whole lot of drama.
Yeah.
And Wendover always does a great job breaking things down visually. So I'm excited to kind of see what they've uncovered here.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we all have this picture of Aspen in our minds, right?
Right.
Celebrities and ski slopes and hot chocolate by a roaring fire.
Yeah.
But a runway that's on its last legs,
Right.
that doesn't exactly scream luxury.
No, not really. What's so interesting about this airport in particular is that it has this kind of glamorous image, but you have to balance that with like the realities of aviation.
Right.
Aspen is in the Rocky Mountains, so it's what's called a high and hot airport.
Okay, hold on. High and hot, that sounds more like my beach vacation gone wrong.
Yeah.
What does that even mean for an airport?
It means that the air is thinner up there.
Okay.
And when you combine that with warmer temperatures, you get less lift. And that impacts how the engines perform.
Wow.
So pilots actually need specialized training.
Oh, wow.
And airlines have to be really careful about which planes they use.
Interesting.
They often have to go with smaller planes.
Okay.
And even then, they have weight restrictions.
Wow. So it's a challenge.
It's a huge challenge.
Especially for a place that's so reliant on air travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just about having like physically enough space for a longer runway.
Right.
It's the physics of actually getting those planes off the ground safely.
Exactly.
In those conditions.
Yeah.
And that 80 feet seems like kind of small potatoes in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Why is everyone making such a big deal about it?
Well, it has to do with what kind of planes can actually land there.
Okay.
So right now, the runway is so short, it forces airlines to use these older, less fuel-efficient aircraft.
So you think smaller plane equals smaller carbon footprint?
Right. You would think that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work out that way.
Interesting.
Not on like a per-passenger basis.
That's a great point. I remember Wendover talking about the Airbus A220.
Yes.
It's supposed to be quieter and so much better on fuel efficiency.
Way more efficient.
But it needs that longer runway.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because you have Aspen, which is known for being environmentally conscious.
Right.
But they could actually see higher emissions if they keep things the way they are.
Wow. I had not considered that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Keep the airport small, potentially harm the environment.
Right.
Expand the airport, and you risk changing the character of the town?
Exactly.
And of course, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, gets to play referee in all of this.
Right. The FAA comes in and says, modernize or risk losing your funding.
Oh, wow.
So you see that tension between local control and national priorities.
Yeah, it's starting to feel a bit like a David and Goliath situation here, with the FAA holding the purse strings. And Wendover mentioned a local group, Aspen Flight Right, that seems ready to fight for its vision of what this airport should be. I love their energy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be easy. The FAA works on this system of grant assurances.
Oh.
So when they give money for these airport improvements, they attach all these conditions to those grants.
So it's kind of like, hey, we'll help you pay for this new runway.
Right.
But you have to follow our blueprint.
Exactly.
And Aspen Flight Right is essentially saying, thanks, but we might have a better idea.
Yeah, they're not afraid to push back.
That takes guts. So what are they proposing instead?
Well, they're looking into other ways to get funding.
Okay.
That would give them more control, you know?
Right.
They wouldn't be so beholden to the FAA.
So they want more autonomy.
Exactly. And we're seeing this more and more where communities are starting to question this top-down approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, who knows the community's needs better than the people who live there?
Exactly.
But then again, the FAA has to make sure it's safe for everyone who flies.
Right. It's a tough situation.
So how do you even begin to reconcile those two perspectives?
Well, it takes communication.
Of course.
And a willingness to compromise on both sides.
Yeah.
This whole thing with the Aspen Airport, it shows you just how tricky it can be.
Yeah.
You have the FAA worried about making sure the national airspace is efficient and that everything is standardized.
Right.
And then you have this community that's worried about the environment.
Right. And how their town might change if the airport gets bigger. It reminds me of that part in the Wendover video.
Yeah.
Where they showed all the different planes that land in Aspen. It's not just like your average commercial flights, right?
No, not at all. You have those Gulfstream 650s.
Right. Those private jets.
Exactly.
I mean, those things probably cost more than my house.
Probably a lot of houses.
It's crazy. So we're talking about taxpayer dollars potentially being used
to
support infrastructure that mostly benefits the ultra-wealthy.
That's the argument some people are making.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think, who's really benefiting from all of this?
That's a valid question.
Okay, so we've got the FAA, local groups, the airlines, even the private jet folks.
That's a lot of players.
All trying to get their way. What if they can't come to some kind of agreement?
That's the big question, isn't it?
This runway isn't going to magically fix itself.
No, it's not. And that's what Wendover really made clear.
It's a serious issue.
The runway is falling apart.
Wow.
They're just putting Band-Aids on it at this point.
So more closures, more delays.
Yeah.
It makes traveling a nightmare.
It's going to be a real problem if they don't figure something out.
You know, I never really thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
It's like trying to fix up your house with duct tape.
That's a good way to put it.
It might work for a little while.
Right.
But eventually, you're going to need to do some serious renovations.
Exactly. And Aspen relies so heavily on tourism.
That's right.
What happens when their connection to the rest of the world becomes unreliable?
What does that do to a town like Aspen?
It could be devastating.
Yeah.
Businesses could lose tons of money.
Yeah.
People could lose their jobs.
And the reputation, I mean, Aspen is supposed to be this top-tier destination.
Right.
And let's be honest, all those temporary fixes, not exactly great for the environment.
No, they're not.
More delays, more diversions, that means more fuel, more emissions.
It all adds up.
It really does.
Yeah,
so this isn't just some abstract debate.
It's about real people's lives.
Exactly. Real people's livelihoods.
Right.
These infrastructure projects are about so much more than just concrete and steel.
Absolutely. There are human costs to consider.
Yeah, it's really eye-opening. We started with this Wendover video about a runway.
Right.
And now we're talking about the environment and the economy and the role of government.
It's a big picture issue.
It really is. So, like, knowing all of this, what can we, as, you know, everyday people who maybe just want to enjoy a ski trip to Aspen without our flight getting canceled, what can we actually do?
That's a great question.
Does our voice even matter in these kind of debates?
It absolutely does. It's easy to feel powerless when you see these big institutions.
But the FAA?
Yeah, going up against the local government.
But it's those local groups like Aspen Flight, right?
Exactly.
They're the ones who are making a difference.
It's everyday citizens who decided to get involved.
It's not just about what's happening in Aspen.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about realizing that these same conversations are happening everywhere.
Exactly.
All over the country.
People fighting for better roads, better public transportation.
Yeah, and safer, more sustainable airports.
Absolutely.
It's happening everywhere.
And the more we know about these issues,
right,
the more we can actually do something about it.
So whether it's calling our representatives or going to town hall meetings or even just talking to our friends and family, those things actually make a difference.
They do. You're not powerless.
That's a good reminder.
We all have a voice.
Knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
The more we know, the better we can advocate for the future we want.
I completely agree.
Okay, so to wrap things up, you sent us this Wendover video about the Aspen Airport. And I think it's safe to say we went way beyond just the runway.
We definitely did. We talked about how hard it is to run an airport in a place like Aspen, and that balance between what the locals want and what the federal government says has to happen.
Yeah.
And of course, all the economic and environmental stuff.
It's complicated.
It is.
We also learned that even things that seem like they're just local issues can actually have a much bigger impact.
They really can.
And that getting involved in our communities can actually make a difference.
I hope that's what people take away from this.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought.
Okay.
Next time you're at the airport, just take a second to think about everything that goes into getting you off the ground and to your destination safely.
It's a small miracle.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a complex system, and it's definitely facing some challenges in the years to come.
It's true.
But that's why we do these deep dives, right?
Exactly.
We uncover all the hidden complexities, the different perspectives, and hopefully it makes you think a little differently about the world.
That's the goal.
And that's the end of this deep dive.